All right, so I want to take a peek at my package.json. So mine had some stuff in it, but it's mostly empty. I want you to pull up your package.json. Beautiful. So when you first populate a package.json, it comes with a default test script, and it's echo \error no test specified. It doesn't really matter what it says. So when you run npm test, what is happening is the node will look into this and it'll look for the test key, and then it'll just run whatever after that. And so we haven't installed Cypress yet, but who remembers the command to run Cypress from your command line? Yep, npx cypress run will run right from your command line. So you want to go into your test file, or you want to go into your package.json and set up your test script. It's really just like a shortcut thing, so you don't have to type that over and over and over again.
You want to do it in your browser? Can you put that command in there?
Yes, you could. So if you prefer the browser version of this, do npm cypress, what's the command? npx cypress open is that command. So once you've added that test script, you're going to go to the tab in your terminal where you don't have anything running in yet. If you run npm test, node looks into your package.json, looks at the test script, and starts to run it. I have Cypress installed, so it's working. If you don't have Cypress installed, then you should install it. So go ahead and run that test command, and then you have two paths. Either it's working or it's not. And if it's not working, you install Cypress. Looks like you didn't save because it still has that old.
No, my package didn't show up.
Right, so run npm test and let's see what happens.
They just come with it into.
So it says no test specified.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay,
Yesterday I had it and I have been working on it.
But we
Yeah, we'll just pass that. So if you want to delete it, sort of, it's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah,
we're
Adam,
messing
let me
with it.
Sure. So I did it over here. Is it right?
The Cypress open looks like it's still working.
It's still going on.
Oh, it's still working?
Yeah.
So did you run npm install Cypress?
I did.
Oh, okay, then yeah, it's probably still.
Yeah.
It takes a while.
I think I have it. I did it on this side. I did. Set it up on here so you can say it.
Good, so you need to change your test script to run a Cypress command. npx cypress
I
run.
have the.
Okay. And you
Cypress.
Sorry.
Nice. So if you run npm test, what happens, Curtis? Oh, you installed Cypress, awesome.
Don't specify. I guess I don't have it.
Yeah, on the test of
That was why.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Yep. So either, if you've installed Cypress, it either is running tests that you've already written a little bit of, or it's saying, I don't have any tests, but you know you have Cypress, because you're getting Cypress errors.
Here's what I'll try it again.
Oh, definitely.
Cool, we've got Cypress. Cypress takes a long time to install.
Oh, cool, okay.
So I have to push this because I don't want to use
Okay.
changes.
Awesome. All right, so yesterday when we ran npm cypress open, it created all of this stuff for us, and we just started writing and manipulating the tests in the integration folder and in the example spec.js. We're going to do something a little bit different today, and this is a really common pattern in test-driven development. And so we're going to create a test directory, and we're going to create a file in that directory. And so it's actually really simple. Just watch me first. So I'm going to create a directory called tests, plural. The test runner, Mocha, automatically looks for a folder called tests. So no matter what you're doing, if Mocha's under the hood, you create a directory called tests, you're good to go. So now I have a test directory. You can see it on the far right. And now I'm going to create a file, and I'm just going to call it site.js. Uh-oh, I didn't put it in my test folder though, so I'm going to move it in there. So I'm going to move site to tests, site.js, And then if I look into tests, I should see site. Oops. Beautiful. So what you need to do is create a tests directory and then create a file in there called site.js. And then if you run npm test, see if you get a different error.
You get back out to the root before we test it, right?
Yes. Actually, it shouldn't matter, but. All right, so you have a test directory. Awesome.
Oh, I just started bringing kids.
Okay. So what I want you to do is instead of running npx every time, I want you to run npm test. You have to change your package.json. So is this open in your code, in your text editor?
Let's see. I think so.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And so it's really easy. You just delete the stuff after test and you change it to npx cypress run and npx cypress open.
The test be there?
So you're actually going to create a test folder.
Oh, right. I thought it's kind of scared to add to this. I didn't know if it's going to be.
I'm adding to it.
Are you?
We'll see how it goes.
So Jeff, one thing I might do is I might do all of this, and then we have confidence that like actually my test folder and my test file works just fine, and you can delete those other things that come with Cypress.
Oh.
So it's fine. All right, this is an awesome error. It says could not find any tests to run. And then it said, we looked but did not find a cypress.json file in this folder. Some of you may have this error, some of you may not. Totally fine. So how many of you have cypress.json, a cypress.json file in your folder? Okay. What command did you use? Do you use npx cypress open or npx cypress run?
Run.
Okay. What about you, Jeff?
I think I tried to use Cypress.json.
Mm-hmm. No, what command did you run?
Oh, I did
Initially.
open.
Okay. So I think when you run open, it automatically gets all of those files that we were looking at yesterday and also creates a cypress.json. If you are doing it this way, it may not. Either way, it doesn't really matter. You can create one by hand. So I'm going to touch my cypress.json. And then when I'm in my text editor and I look, it's empty.
But it's not in your test folder.
If you have a cypress.json file, you can either leave it or you can create one in your like version 1 directory. Well, you should get to the same destination, slightly different paths. All right, so Jacob, what do you have in your cypress.json? What data type is in there? So, yep, he's got something that starts with and closes with a curly braces, so it's an object. Then there's a key value pair.
So, base URL.
Base URL. And so this is JSON, and I know that because the key is in quotation marks. And then what's the value? So whatever your local host is running on, and this is why it's helpful to have this up, localhost 8080 app. It's actually going to be helpful. So this is sort of like the firebase.json file. When you deploy to Firebase, you can do some configuration in here. You can actually turn off video recordings and the screenshots that Cypress does in here. I'm going to go grab that.
Does it automatically do the screenshot at the end?
I think so.
Do that screenshot?
Oh, actually, it looks like it doesn't. So I was using this cypress.json earlier today. And so it says, what's the integration folder? We called it tests, screenshots folder, test screenshots. I actually don't want that. Videos folder, I don't want that. So there's some things you can configure. I am going to add this to my cypress.json so that it knows where to look. I think it does because it's Mocha, but maybe not. So let me just run my tests and see what happens. npm tests. Oh, see my. Oh, hey. So I'm not getting an error. Awesome. Which means I'm like getting to where my tests are configured properly. I don't have any tests written, so there's 0 passing and 0 failing. That's perfect. That's right where I want to be. So let's see, Jacob, let's take a look at those. Probably test is plural, and then in quotation marks. So how many of you are at a spot that looks like this, where you're...
I got a lot of passing tests. A whole lot.
Does it look like this?
Sir, which one are we actually testing? I just got cut out.
We are running the test in the tests folder. Yeah, so it would be... Yeah. Perfect. You're right where you should be. All right, so just like we did yesterday, it takes forever to install Cypress. It takes forever to configure it. We're actually at the spot where we were yesterday, but we're inside our drill one. So, install Cypress on a project? Check. So, I want you to think about what did we do, or what did you do to get to this point? And if you had to recreate it, how would you explain it? So what commands did we run? What did we do to get to this point? So think about it first. And then,
I have a question actually.
okay.
You created the test folder.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly did you do in there? 'Cause it looks like you did your npm test outside of it.
It's a good question. So I created my test folder, and then inside I have a file called site.js. That's where I'm going to write my tests.
Okay.
Yesterday, Cypress did it for me. It had that like Cypress folder, then the integration folder,
Right.
and then this example spec. I'm doing that on my own. I'm not having.
Even
Cypress
though you
do it.
still have it on there, that example.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know if I have those tests in there, but
Yeah. I have that again.
it's okay.
And I did my npm test inside my test folder. Is that?
It should be in the root directory.
I should probably do it again.
Yep.
Okay. I did it too.
Oh, there you go.
All right, so question for you is, how do you get to this point where you have your tests configured properly, but you haven't actually written any tests? Turn and talk with somebody next to you, just walk them through those steps.
So
How do you do that?
how to do what?
Like, I didn't really suck on my roomie. I did mine on I did mine on the actual.
I did. I covered it
On the version one.
And it's-
That's why on the roomie.
That's why.
That's not it.
I did it one not on Bob.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you have to do it with the
I made the test
I
folder
created
and
a Cypress JSON. And then inside the JSON.
So I'm running it again. But
website, in the integration folder.
Join the project folder.
And then NPU test, and have 0 passing or failing for that.
Install.
And take a video of us.
Yeah.
That's the code for it, we understand what it's
Yeah.
Or on the barcode. So don't buy them.
I think
I'm gonna ask you to still shop it out.
Okay, I did this with True yesterday, so if you just follow my hands,
Make it here.
So after we install, we need to use JSON file and change the test key to whatever we need to run.
Oh, I did mine NPX, that's wrong, original 7. I did it right when you go to do it there.
Yes.
And then it's just a test, sure.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to write this down.
Yes, I'm gonna write this down for you. You should also write it down to help you learn
Okay.
more, but I'm literally going to send you the how to do this list in Slack. So step 1 is what?
Get to the phone meeting.
Beautiful. Yeah. So step 1 is get into we'll use the word folder you want to write tests for. Cool. What's step 2? So this one, yes, so this is, the language for this is you want to initialize a node project. You just want to tell your computer basically, or anywhere you deploy this project, hey, I'm going to use Node.js to run this thing, and the key for that is having a package.json. So you initialize.
We're good now.
Initialize a node project. If you, maybe one of you might be a resident, then you get to start typing in front of people and see how horrible it is.
Every time somebody's like, yeah, do this.
So you initialize a node project, and the command for that is
NPM
npm
and it.
init. And if you want the shortcut command, npm init -y. Cool.
Is that the stuff in Node Package Manager?
I think technically not,
Oh, no.
but yes, that's how I remember it. Node package manager. That's how I get all of that cool code that I don't have to write. Cool. So we've changed into the directory we want to write tests in. We've initialized a node project. What else? We want to install our tests. So install Cypress. What's the command, Curtis?
Install Cypress?
Yep, npm install Cypress. This is where you like wait for a while. All right, so now that we've installed Cypress, I'm lazy. I don't want to write npx open or npx Cypress run every time. So how do I ensure I just have to type npm test?
Change the package.json.
Yep. So you go into the package.json and change the test command to, I prefer npx, I prefer the command line, Cypress run. If you prefer the browser version, just remember npx Cypress open. Cool, all right. We're not done yet, but let's just review. So get into the folder you want to write tests for, initialize a node project with these commands, install Cypress, change your test command to use Cypress, go into the package.json and change the test command to npx Cypress run. Now we want to, I'll just say, create a test. So the first thing there is, I'm going to do it where you create the folder. So create a folder called tests, and then inside the tests folder, create a file. You can call the file whatever you want, but call it test.js for now. And then last thing is make sure you have a cypress.json file and have the correct base URL. Cool. All right, so that's a little handy how-to guide. So you can sort of put all of thinking about that off to the side. Let's get to the cool part, which is actually writing tests. So I'm in my file where I'm going to write my tests. I want you to join me. It's blank. Mine is called site. If you're using what we used yesterday, go into the example spec.js file and just delete everything.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
In this video by Berta, he started off with is git checkout instead of a basic branch, so that you can run your tests without breaking your stuff, but I don't actually.
Sure. So that's a good question. So what you could do is if you have your app, like this app we have that comes with this drill, and you're like, I don't want to mess anything up because it works perfectly. So what you can do is you can create a branch. So you would say git checkout -b and then the name of the branch, so maybe test. And then your master branch stays as is, and then you get changed into your test branch. And then you can do whatever you want, make whatever changes you want. You can break shit. If at the end of your time you're like, I love this code, I want to merge it back into master, you can do that. If you're like, this is a disaster, I've made a terrible mistake, you can like delete that branch and just go back to your master. So it's a good version control tool. Yeah. We're not really gonna monkey with the app stuff, but feature branching is a really cool thing that developers get to do. Like, all right, I have something that's working, I want to experiment, but I don't want to break what I've got, so let me create a new branch. All right, so all tests follow this pattern. They begin with a describe statement, and then under that, there is an it statement. Oh, no, not. An it, which is called the assertion, so you're asserting what should be true. And actually, and then you write the assertions. So we're going to fill these out. So. So this is a good thing to memorize right now, and as you sort of move through your path as a developer, let the understanding unfold. But describe, it, and assertions is the pattern. And so while you're typing, I'm just going to explain what this is. So the describe statement is actually the thing that you see when you run your test, and it's intended to be a very high-level description of what you're testing. So the thing that we're testing, and I'm just going to look in the README to see what are we testing in this. So it says, in this drill, you're going to test that a local app works correctly in the browser. The app to test is in the app folder. It just needs to be run locally. So you're going to test that a local app works correctly in the browser. So I'm literally just going to copy that.
You said refer to read.
You refer to, if you have someone wrote a README for you, yes. And I'll close this out. And so the first argument in the describe statement is a string, and it's the description that you want printed on your tests. And so if somebody else is running these tests, they want to know, like, what's the high-level thing that I'm working on? Test that a local app works correctly in your browser. So both describe statements and it statements, they have two arguments. There's two things they take. The first is a string, it's the description. The second thing is an anonymous function, which just means a function that has no name. I'm going to use ES6, so I have open and closing parens, and then a fat arrow, and then I have an open and closing curly brace.
Seems like that if those should go in the curly, right?
You're correct.
Oh.
Good. And then just like Will said, everything else is going to go inside of that describe function. So then I'm going to have it. And it follows the same pattern. It takes a string, and then it takes an anonymous function.
Would you prefer us to do the fat arrows over just writing out function?
It does not matter to me.
Weren't
Does
asking
it look
you
nice?
that.
It's more efficient. I mean, you look like you know ES6. You look like a more modern JavaScript developer if you use the syntax. Well, and especially if the function isn't named. All right, so once you have that set up, and I'm going to start mine because it takes a little while, I'm going to run my test command. So npm tests, and I think I'm going to see that describe statement show up in my browser. So once you think you've got your describe and your it, go ahead and run your test, and then we'll wait a little while.
Okay, we're real good at that.
Yep, me too.
I think you already said it, but I still have my example spec.js. How do I make it so that my site.js is the one that it's connected to?
It's a good question. Are you using the browser version?
I
Are you clicking run test or using?
No, I changed. I'm doing the terminal version.
Okay. In your cypress.json, you want to tell Cypress that your integration folder, you're actually using tests. The test folder, not the folder that came with.
Yeah, if it actually has the integration folder, you don't even need that,
Oh, cool.
because that's how mine ended up working. But if you want to make it something else, then you have to just declare the integration folder. That makes sense. You're basically rerouting it instead of going to the integration folder
Yeah,
and telling it to go to it.
I'm planning to go do tests.
Yesterday you said that if we run it in the browser, it's faster.
Oh.
No.
So it's faster in
I'm not sure it's faster in the terminal either.
I felt like in the browser it was like 3 or 4 seconds.
It may have cached a lot of it, and as we reran it, it wasn't like rebuilding it every time.
Right, that's what it is.
Yeah, it was, because if I was changing one line, it was like waiting at that line and then retesting just that.
Look! My describe statement's there. It says, what am I doing here? Test that a local app works correctly in your browser. One passing, okay. And then I also want to this is like a mid-level description of what we're testing. So if I look back at the README and I actually look at the things that I'm testing, the page should have a logo, the page should have secondary header, the page should have. So maybe like a mid-level description would be testing that the page contains certain elements. So whether or not you're writing tests in Cypress, if you're writing tests that use Mocha as the test runner, you're going to use this describe and it pattern. And it's intended to help you by just giving you some context about what you're writing tests for. All right, so the last thing that we're going to, well, not the last thing. So now I'm going to move into the assertions. Before I can test what's on that page, I have to tell Cypress what link to visit. And so you say sci.visit. And then whatever is in my cypress.json, so this is my base URL. localhost 8080 app. And then if I look in my browser, I just want to make sure. Like if I had to add something else at the end, I would put that in visit, but it looks like I'm just visiting that base URL, so that's just /. And I'll run the test again. So today I was working on this and I didn't have the right base URL and nothing was passing. And so I was like, oh, I didn't actually configure it properly. All right, so thumbs up when you are running the test if you have these 3 lines, describe it inside that visit.
I'm still trying to change my cypress.json.
Mm-hmm.
It's giving me like, it's not liking it. Just even when I type it.
Yeah, your text editor's like,
Yeah.
integration folder test. Can I just
Yeah.
see?
Is it because there's no base URL yet?
It looks like you have the wrong type of, oh, you copied it from Slack. It has the wrong type of quotation marks. It's the wrong ASCII character.
Okay.
You don't need backticks, you actually just need to delete them manually and then type the quotation mark.
I
That happens, so this is why it's actually important to format your code in Slack. I did not format that as code, and so it gave him the wrong type of quotation mark. Oh yeah, definitely.
And it doesn't want single quotes.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Stan.
So, in my visit, yesterday I put in quotation marks /
You need to add a base URL. You put a /app.
I'm gonna post.
And then when I just followed along with you and ran your way, it broke. But if I throw it out back in there, it runs again. Like so.
So you just have to tell Cypress the URL that it needs to visit. And so if we were testing a live site, like if we were testing Google, what would I put as the base URL here? Yeah.
I go to the integration folder.
Depends on what if you paid one or not.
Okay.
All right, hang with us, Adam. I want you to just type the assertion code with us. It's okay to not have your test passing. I will sit with you and debug it at the end. All right, so now we can finally start writing assertions. And so we are going to learn how to get elements from a page using Cypress. We're going to learn how to cache elements, meaning you can get an element and then save it in a variable and then reuse that variable because it cuts down on the amount of time it takes Cypress to actually query your page. And if we have time, we'll work on actions like click and type. So if I go back to the README, all right, it says the first thing, the page should have a logo that displays the image at images, PHP travels, logo.png. So we did a little bit of this yesterday, but whenever you want to get something and test it, you have to use sci.get. And then the thing that I'm looking for is a logo that displays the image. So if I actually go into the index.html, ooh, thank you. So Savannah's helping me out. She's saying, well, it's in the header, and then nested in the header is this image, and it has this attribute, which is called source. And so I'm just going to show you how to write that. So first thing I'm going to do, always in a string, is I'm going to, let's see if I get this right. Savannah, do you know? I'm going to go into the header and then grab the image. Okay? And then the thing that I'm testing for, I'm saying in the header, in that image, it should have an attribute. That's the source, and then the value of that is that path that's in the README.
Do you need that greater than? Because I didn't put that one in.
Awesome.
That's okay, not easy.
If it gets in there without the angle tag, then yes, that's wonderful. All right, so I'm gonna run my test. I don't know if it's gonna pass or not, but we know how long it takes, so I want your code to match mine. I'm gonna scroll this over a little bit, see. All right, giving me to describe what I'm doing, test the local app works correctly in your browser. Awesome. Testing that the page contains certain elements. What would I need to do if I wanted a message like this for every assertion that I'm writing? Like, what if I wanted a check mark there?
You have to make a new test.
I wouldn't have to make a new test, but I would have to make a new,
Describe it.
not a new describe even if I did it. So I could do,
Oh yeah, I guess that's.
I could do it test that the image has an attribute of, or the image has the logo or something like that. So if you wanted to,
Just be decided yet, you would do that?
and then you could, yeah, I'm just like, this is all it will say, so I don't get any specificity on what test is passing or failing. So if you wanted to write, actually you were right, if you wanted to write another test, you would use another it block. All right, so we got the header and image. How many of you are running your test? It's okay if it hasn't completed yet.
So on the browser version I did yesterday,
Mhm.
it would like specifically tell me if I had like a typo or something. Does this do that too?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. Huh?
That took like 5 seconds.
I wonder why mine's so slow. My computer's also making like pained noises today. All right, I'm gonna go on. Follow along with me if you can. Just follow along with me.
Got you.
Next thing I'm testing for, the page should have a secondary header that says application test drive. In HTML, how do you signify a secondary header? Yep. And then that says application test drive. I'm literally going to copy this. So by now you're probably getting the hang of some of the Cypress syntax. So I'm going to say Cypress get the H2, and it should have text that says application test drive. And then I'm also going to do the next one. So it says the page should have navigation links for demo, order, and product. And then there's all these other tests. The product link should have these items. And so I'm going to be testing these links a lot. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a variable and save it. And so the way that you do that is you say side.get, and then what is the thing I want? I want navigation links. So if I look in the HTML, think I can go header, nav, ul, I. This is the hardest part for me, is finding these. Header, nav, ul, and then li. And then Cypress has like a save as. I'm just gonna look. Oh, you just do dot as to save it. Dot as, and I'm gonna call that nav links.
So you would just save the header and nav view.
Yeah, and so what I'm doing is I'm saying get this element or get these elements and save them in this variable name called navlinks. And then I can do sci.get, and then if I do at and then the name of the variable, it won't query for it again. It saved it, so it doesn't take forever. Any like performance enhancement you can get on here is worth it.
Couldn't you, I mean, it's in JavaScript, could you also write like variables?
Yeah, you probably could, yeah. That's a good question. And I'm going to copy my working code. And then you can see on line 7, let me make that full screen. Now I'm using navlinks, and I'm saying get navlinks, and then navlinks is an array. I'm saying in position 0, get the anchor tag, and it should have the text demo. And then the other two you test from there. So I'm going to run these tests. I will put that back up for you. So we are about out of time. Let's take a look at our objectives and talk through what we've learned. So first objective was that you would install Cypress on a project. And the second objective was that you would write assertions using Cypress. So what do you know now? What can you do now that you couldn't do before you walked into the breakout? So think about it first. And then we're going to do a whip around, so just keep it relatively short, but we'll start with Jacob. What'd you learn?
I mean, I like the variables. That's pretty sweet.
So you learned how to cache a query selector. Excellent. How do you do that?
By naming it and then doing the dot as.
Mm-hmm.
And then just basically name it.
Yep, so you select it first with get, and then you save it with the dot as, and then you can access it in the future with the at symbol and then the name of the variable. So we saved it here as navlinks, and now we can access it here, and it's not going to make another query to the live page, so it'll go a little bit faster. Awesome. Savannah, one thing you learned.
Can I learn it right now?
Yes, you can.
The syntax for the dot get dot equal dot.
Mhm. Yep. So the navlinks is let's see. Navlinks. Oh God, come on. Nope, that was the opposite of what I wanted. These are the navlinks, and so the way they get rendered in the DOM is they come back as a node list or an array, and so it's 0, 1, and 2. And so in this code, I'm saying get that set of links, and then I'm testing in the first position in that array, the anchor tag should have the text demo.
But the syntax is always like that when you start with Cypress and then down the line.
So my text editor formats it like that for me, but you could do it like this. JavaScript doesn't care. It's easier for me to read that way, and I don't know how to change my text editor from doing it. So. Yeah, cool. So what did you learn? Just one thing.
How about this? I learned that fat arrows look way nicer.
That's fine with me. You learned you prefer fat arrow functions. Excellent. Adam, one thing you learned.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still super like lost on this. I think, but I mean, I got
I mean,
Let's think back to
I got a lot out of it.
think back to even just like initializing a node project or one of these commands.
Oh yeah. I think, I mean that whole, just to tell you what Jacob said, we're setting up that nav list right there.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just looks so much easier when it's almost like in plain English there when you're trying to read it, you know.
Good. So what you're saying is you like behavior-driven development, like
Yeah.
test-driven development, where it's the way that the tests are written are intended to sound like English.
Right.
Awesome. All right, Will. One thing you learned.
I learned how to make your own test folder with the test.js. I think that was really corny going into integration and then deleting everything they had and just starting from there. So
Cool.
I do that.
So if you don't get that like humongous set of folders and files generated, and you make your own test folders, you also have to make your cypress.json
Right, you
file.
have to integration folder test. that.
Yeah. So if you're using tests and you're trying to run, it's like Cypress isn't working properly, you probably need to by hand make a cypress.json.
And how come I keep getting this big Cypress folder with all this stuff in it?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer.
Okay. I think I just put a lot of commands in my terminal.
I think if you install Cypress and then right away you run npx cypress open, that's when it happens.
Yeah, because it keeps telling me every time that I open it. So it looks like this is the first time you're using Cypress. No, this is the fifth time today.
Jeff, one thing you learned.
I learned how to set up package.json so you can just run your test instead of npx, cypress run, or open.
Yep, so the scripts in your package.json let you have shortcuts that you can control. So like if you're using HTTP server to start your app, you can write a start script and say HTTP server. So then if you type npm start, that's the command it'll run. So cool. Curtis, one thing you learned.
About the site.js page, understanding what each thing means, like describe it, understanding how to use visit and then get. So,
Excellent.
I said it yesterday. I just didn't know what anything meant, and so today it's like kind of clear to me on how to actually use these and pass the test.
Awesome. Good. Yeah, and like I said, that's a really common pattern, especially when Mocha is your test runner. Describe is like the top level thing. Sort of what am I doing? It is what is each test testing, and yeah, it's so cool that you can see it on the other end. Cool. All right. Thank you. Adam, I want you to stay so we can debug. Will, if you want, I don't know if you want or need to stay, but you're welcome.